Well, welcome to Inside the Fusee. And so what I've got here is a Fusee pocket watch movement. There's no maker's marks on it. What I'm going to do is take it apart as an exploration. This will show, some of the kind of things that can go wrong with these watches. But it's also a bit of a practice for me because I've got a rather more expensive one to do in the near future. So the first thing I want to do is just take a close look at some of the things that are going on with this little watch. So if you look at this here, that should kind of rock freely, and it doesn't. So there's something wrong with that, and the fact that it's sitting right against the surface there suggests that the problem may actually not be at this end, it may be at the other end. So we're going to take that off shortly. And if you look at the screws on this, lovely bluing they've got, absolutely brilliant. Now on the other side we can see we've got a problem, and we've already had one part fall off completely, and that's good because it's a nice part and it's intact and it can be used again. But the enamel dial, unfortunately, at first I thought somebody had tried to peel this off, because maybe they didn't know how to take it apart. But I actually don't think that's it. I think what's happened here is that this has been in the watch case and it's had a bang when it's been flipped out, and it's just ripped off the hinge completely. So we don't have to take the hands off this watch because it's already been done for us. So the next thing to do then is to take this balance wheel off, and that is done by undoing this screw, I believe. And there's a little pin pivot there that holds it and stops it spinning. Okay, so far so good. Now that should loosen up the bridge there. Okay, so what we've got there is, that's the adjustment lever, which appears to be working perfectly. So I'm probably not going to do anything with that. Okay, so I've given the diamond cup a little twizzle with a little bamboo stick, and it does appear to be nice and cuppy shaped. Doesn't seem to be any cracks or smashes or anything in it, so looks like we've got a good jewel. So you need to be a little bit careful. There is a pin pretty much like this one here. There's a pin here which stops this little arm from moving about, so you've got to watch that you don't break that off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just lift the whole assembly off. I don't see any obvious damage, I have to say. It doesn't look like it has a crown wheel, it looks like it has a hammer, a lever. So I'm not really sure why that's sitting so low. Okay, for the next part, as you see we've got a damaged face here, so we need to get that off. Now these faces are held on with little pins, and I think there is only one remaining, and that's it, just there, just in front of my finger there. So we'll take that out next. Kind of keeping this in focus. There you go. There's the pin out. Now with a bit of persuasion, the plate comes straight off. There's the back of it, and you can see how it's been damaged there. What we've got here is the remains of the old pins, which have just been pulled free, and same on some of the other ones. Okay, so if we look around the clock now, we had a wheel on here which has come off. There are parts missing. That's the release wheel for the drum, and if you go to the side of the drum there, you can rotate that with your finger. So there may not even be a spring in there. That's the third wheel cover there, which is intact, but it looks like there's screws missing or something missing from here. And there is one further pin needed to release this. The watch is a mess, but I bought it to do a practice with, so it's okay. So there we have the face hold, and it looks actually as if the face hold pinning was behind this, and you would have had to remove this first before you remove the face hold pinning. Right, so this has been hammered back a little, but you can kind of see there's still a bit of damage here which needs rectifying. But it's interesting that this is like the face hold plate, and I don't know if there's a technical name for that, there probably is, but it seems that the actual mechanism plate is not bent at all, which means there's a chance you could get this working again if you wanted to. Okay, so as you can see there, the drum just spins, so there's clearly no fusee chain in there. Now I can see a spring through the gap there, so there is a spring in there. So the next thing to do is take this bridge off. Now if I look at the other side, there should be a release cog for it. So if you look here, the release cog has been taken off by someone, probably for spares I would imagine. A little chock for it is still there. Well, that's it. Now all of these screws are very loose, so that suggests to me that someone's had this apart, probably looking for parts I would imagine. Okay, so that's the bridge from the barrel moved. So I have to say it looks pretty clean inside considering. So this does leave it off, and it's a snap fit, and I can't see any breaks on that spring at all, so it looks intact. And I guess there was just nothing holding it. That's where the spring is attached. Now if you look round, you can see here little marks there. That is where the fusee hook, the fusee chain hook, gets inserted into the drum. Just out of interest. Okay, so this part here, and there's an associated spring which appears to have a chrome screw on it. This is the case catch. That's all it is. As you can see the other end where the flat piece is there. That's where the hinge goes, which was ripped off, which is why this watch was damaged. Fortunately, the design of the watch has this plate, and as you can see from the end piece there, the plate got damaged and the watch didn't, and that's probably a deliberate part of the design, I would think. So I'll slack the spring off and use a fine steel blade to lever it up and over. That way there's no tension on it when you take it off. Now you can see there that one end of it has a pivot to help with the tension of the spring, so don't break that either. Okay, so now we're going to remove the third wheel bridge. It's just here. This is 2 screws on it, and one of the reasons why you're supposed to use a watch holder, okay, is that you can just see there. That's the second hand, pivot, and it sticks up and it's pretty delicate. You need to make sure you don't bang that. It's one of the reasons why you're not supposed to do what I'm doing here. Right? This is just a practice, and I'm doing it for spares, so it's not that big a deal. But if you're doing a real watch, you need to be careful. Okay, so that's your third wheel. Now, I actually think, if I just put that back in again briefly, I think there's a damaged tooth on that. So I'm going to have to inspect that carefully, because I think there's a damaged tooth on that. Okay, I'm pretty confident that that is all you can take off that side. So we need to be careful now with these. And we come back to this side, and it becomes obvious now why the watch wasn't working properly. It's sustained damage, but it's also been put back together rather badly. So you can see just here there's a pin present there which needs to be taken out. But if you look here, that one there, that's got the remains of a pin, but it's not being held very tight. And critically, the one that was near the balance has no pin. So this watch movement has to be held together at an exact distance apart. Let's just demonstrate that from the side there. So that distance there has to be an exact distance, and if it isn't, then your balance wheel won't sit properly because it will be the wrong length, and the other cogs will be too loose too, and then it may cause problems with where they mesh together. Now if you look down the sides of this, you can actually see, you could get a feeler gauge in there between the post and the top plate, and that is not where you should be with a watch really. So that is probably why the balance wheel wasn't sitting properly, because there's nothing actually wrong with the balance wheel, and that is probably why the watch wasn't working. In actual fact, this is all, some of this is due to the damage, but some of it appears to be due to people taking it apart and maybe not putting it back together again, or maybe not understanding how it came apart properly, maybe. Well, that does solve part of the mystery of what's been going wrong here. That looks like it's going to come out okay. Famous last words. There you go. So this is the only pin in there which had any sort of length on it that was worth anything. So that'll be why it wasn't sitting properly. In a modern watch it's called a pallet fork. I think it's the lever in this watch, maybe. I'm not sure, it doesn't have a crown wheel. So underneath here, this is a Fusee cone. This little ratchet was actually sitting between the cog and the brass part of the Fusee cone instead of on the cog, and that was because the case wasn't pinned properly. So there you go, there's a particular problem to watch out for. The other cogs seem to be intact and seem to be in good condition too. So here we have the Fusee cone spring, which is not particularly well tensioned actually, it's very loose. So that's, again, that could be part of the issue with this watch. So there's the Fusee cone spring. Yeah. And there's the ratchet piece coming off. This is the cone itself, which is separated, and some clocks it's not, and some it is. And that might need a little bit of attention. I'm not really sure just now. So these little wheels here, they are pretty delicate, so you've got to take care not to damage them. And the pivot mounts that they actually go into are absolutely minute, so that means that the pivots on them are pretty minute too, so you gotta be careful. So that's your base plate with no bits on it. Okay, so looking at the Fusee cone in this watch, you can see this spiral here, around and round and round and round and round. This is designed to take up the slack in the spring as the spring unwinds, and it's also part of the winding and collecting mechanism. So on the other side of it there, you can see there's a little ratchet cog. Now the problem is that if you look at this piece here, I'll get a slightly sharper pointer. This little ratchet, which is supposed to engage with it, doesn't engage with it because one of them, that one there, has a broken tooth, and that one there looks a bit twisted. So this either would have to be repaired somehow, which might be pretty tricky actually, or just replaced, which also might pose problems. So I think this watch probably isn't much use as a watch anymore. So lastly, the plate that held the balance has been lifted off. You can see on the other side there, just here, there's a couple of jewels. Sorry, there's a jewel with a couple of screws. That is quite a good jewel, so it's worth keeping hold of that. And what we also have here is that's the back side of the jewel. Just there is a bridge which holds this lever, fork lever type arrangement. There's a couple of mini little pins there which you have to be careful not to damage. There's a screw that takes the bridge out, and I believe there's a jewel in here. Now there's also another piece here which comes out with a peg. Not really sure what that is at the moment. I don't have a lot of experience with Fusee, so it looks functional anyway. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. And there's a spring with a screw here which doesn't appear to do anything that I can see. So I'll take those off, but I'm not really sure what they are. So I've got a little push fit jewel on the top of this bridge, which is interesting. Okay, so to get this pin out, there you go, that's an old silversmith's technique. Now you can lift that off. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but there you go. So I think we can conclude that this watch had a major problem because somebody hadn't pinned it properly, and somebody had pulled it out of the case and ripped the hinge off. All these things would have caused distortion and problems. And there was a problem with the ratchet on the Fusee. There were at least 4 missing parts that I can think of, and including the Fusee chain itself. Unfortunately, because of the damage to the Fusee cone, let's get another identical one. We won't be able to get this going again. We also need a Fusee chain, of course, but because of that is a problem. So, well, have to see, won't we? Well, folks, that brings us to the end of this little video. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Bye.